Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI Marketing. Today, joining me, Jon Benson, and we're going to talk about cloning yourself with AI and getting AI to act like you and behave like you. Apparently, we'll get into it more when Jon and I start the conversation. But before then, Jon, will you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, Mark. So I started in 2004 online and began as just a fitness guy, just a guy that just wrote a fitness book and happened to got pretty fortunate with how it went over. And so I wrote a second book, and this time I didn't have the luxury of having my partner was a copywriter at the time and a very successful marketer. I knew nothing about copywriting. And so I had to try to write copy, and that did not work out that well. And so through that whole process, I just inadvertently created the video sales letter. I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to figure out a way to get people to read my copy, essentially. And the more I could get people to read the copy, the more I thought that it could possibly be, an issue of them only reading 7% of the sales page, which is about the average. So I thought, what if every page was a sales page? What a headline? In other words, the thing that everyone reads. And so that became the first VSL, and it kind of took off from there. And didn't anticipate to become a copywriter, but I ended up doing that. And then in 2010, we started playing around with copywriting software, and that's what got us into AI very early. We were into AI as early as 2017. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
What was AI like back then? Could it string two sentences together?
Yeah, no. We were like, basically, I tell this story and people think I'm kidding. In 2017, 2018, we were reaching out to AI companies. One company was put one of the rovers on Mars. So we're talking like extremely advanced, technological companies. And they said that what we wanted to do was harder for AI to do than put a rover on Mars. So at that time we were, yeah, it's like, okay, I'm like, well, I'm just shaking my head and going, man, all we're wanting you to do is to fill in some blanks. But if you think about it, AI until the breakthrough of really the GPT breakthrough when it came out with 3.5 was the very first model that was intuitive enough to start filling in blanks and start sounding a little bit more human. And that's what we needed to do when it comes to AI, and then have it be intuitive enough to say, if this says this, then what else would this mean, and all that kind of stuff. And that's what AI does pretty well right now.
Yeah, and it's confusing to me because they still haven't got a model up there. Maybe you and I could debate this, that really can emulate your own voice in a very authentic way. There's always tells, I feel, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And so let's jump into that. I mean, what's it going to take for AI to sound human? Do you see anything on the horizon?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's changing every single day. I mean, it's the progression is pretty amazing. I have an offer we have called You Cloned, and that's essentially getting a clone of yourself. And I'm not talking about a video clone. We've been doing that for years. That's relatively easy, even though it's kind of hokey. What I'm talking about is a digital clone of your brain, so that it can answer, talk like you, basically run the things that you run within reason, of course. And that's a 24/7, 365 employee, if you will, for $500 a month. So it's like, that's the way I look at it. And in order for it to do that, what we figured out early on was that, well, it's going to have to understand everything there is to know about you, and you have to be okay to give it that information. So one of the very first things we do is break it to our clients that it already knows. It already knows a lot about you. So you sharing your 20-year email history, unless you're doing anything illegal, isn't going to hurt anything, because chances are it already knows a lot of it anyway. But it will learn to talk like you. So that's the first thing I did. Is I said, well, you have to get AI on. You have to have you can't be online. You can't be on like Claude.ai. You can't be on ChatGPT. You have to use Claude Code or Codex or something that's offline and allows you to pull from your computer. And so that's how we started with this, is like pull from your computer and access, how do I talk? How do I answer questions? What's my personality like? And gave it a ton of information. And then after that, and reading through all my courses, all the things I've written over the last 20 years, it has a lot better chance of sounding like you, which is why you're not going to go to Claude and have it sound like you. It's just not going to happen. It's going to come close, especially if you have more of a generic voice. It'll come close, but I have a very weird style of writing. So I knew this was going to be really difficult, and to get it to sound like me was a real challenge.
But the written word isn't the spoken word. So how does it know how to speak like you?
Yeah. So speaking like me and sounding like me are two different things. So with 11 Labs and training it really specifically, like I have a couple of hacks that we give to our collective members to help you tune 11 Labs a little bit tighter to what sounds much more human. but there's some tricks to that. But that's basically just kind of waiting on the technology. Same thing we were doing with AI. We were just waiting on the technology to be able to fill in the blanks, or to hypothesize on what a avatar would be into if they were into X. So if somebody wanted to lose weight, what would their secondary goals be? What would their fears be? What would their objections be? It's hard to do for AI. Benson does it really, really well because it's trained to do it, but it was very difficult at first to get it to do that.
And then, the first thing I thought of when you talked about this application was, wouldn't it be great to download your brain into something like this, and when you pass, your offspring and their offspring can have conversations with you about what you would do. I just don't know how you get that all into an AI system reliably. And the only thing I can think of is you're wearing a necklace device that records every second of every day and every conversation you've ever had for years.
Yep, that's one thing that quite a few friends of mine are doing. They're wearing things like there's Limitless is one of the wearable devices that you wear around your neck, and they record everything 24/7. I don't think you have to go to that extreme necessarily, unless you're literally wanting to record your life. And there are companies that already do that, that do the Black Mirror kind of thing, where here's your digital version of yourself. I have a digital version of just one aspect of myself, which is all I wanted to have, and that aspect was, how would I? Because I charge $5,000 an hour to consult with people for marketing, and I have for the last 11 years. So how would I clone myself? Could I take the knowledge that I have over 11 years and make that work for people and have it actually sound like me? And we got it to sound and talk and react just like me. So that's the one thing that will, but it won't do it personally. It won't it wouldn't talk to my wife the same way I talk to my wife.
That's what I love to see.
Yeah, it's really freaking cool. It's we're really kind of proud of that one, but that also is limited. I mean, there's a little bit of delay on the voice because we don't have $1 billion budget like Grok does, where you have they just came out with, as you probably know, Chat just came out with like a voice.
Oh, it's
a voice tool that's almost instant, and which is amazing.
No, it's better than instant. It talks over you like I just did to you.
Yeah, it talks over you. Yeah.
Because when you're doing translation, that's the only way to do it. And
so it does it, but there's some catches in it. It talks over you in a programmatic way, but the next iteration of this will be really pretty much spot on. I prefer, especially when I'm dealing with consulting with people, to do more like an Aura thing, where Aura has a great, Grok's voiceover has a great real-time accessibility, knows when to shut up. And I think that's going to be where people land with it. I think that they're trying to push the gap there on that. But what the technology part of it is only one aspect of it. It's what it's saying is the most important. And you can tell if it's saying what you would actually say, if it's doing the kiss ass part, if it's doing the, here's the honest assessment of that, Mark, if it does that kind of stuff, then it's really coming from Claude or from Chat. And, our stuff doesn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when we're going to get there, maybe with the Neuralink, because some days I might answer a question one way, maybe because I was programmed by, some marketing speak that I saw somewhere else. Yeah. And then a week later, I'm saying something completely different to the same question. I don't know how that lands, if consistency is the best answer, or does my clone know about context when somebody's asking me a question? I'm not sure, way beyond my pay grade, but it seems like, we won't have perfect clones. And I'm not saying you're saying that, but we won't have perfect clones until we go.
No, but if somebody was to pay, like, for example, $500 versus $5,000, and they were to get me as a consultant, and I was to give an answer that would be 95% correct, believe you me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, you pay 10% to get 95% of the results. That's only a fool would turn that down, right? So that's our goal, is to do that, and knowing that nothing's going to be perfect. But then again, here's the interesting thing, and that's just the thing I talk a lot about, Mark. I mean, almost every conversation ends up going where we're about to go. I hate to break it to everyone listening, you're not perfect either. And this is the really trippy thing I get, especially with copywriters. It's like, I was on a podcast a couple of days ago, and the guy said, well, I ran this through and it came out with a pretty decent first draft, but I had to tell it to do X, Y, and Z. I go, well, how many human first drafts did you do that with? How many first drafts did you write yourself that you had to do that with? I mean, I'm like one of the top copywriters planet, right? And I will write a first draft and I will edit that first draft. So if I'm editing my own stuff, do you honestly think that AI is going to give you something that you won't have to edit? That's just insane. But people they have a level of expectation with AI that I think is coming from the microwave generation of, like, I'm going to press a button in a minute, I'm going to have dinner, right? well, yeah, you're gonna have a really shitty dinner. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they're not teaching critical thinking much anymore.
No, no.
So that applies to editing as well.
It was my master's degree, so I mean, yeah, well, philosophy. So yeah, you learn a lot of critical thinking. So, but it is super important to think through this critically from a position of like, what are your expectations? But if you set your expectations nominally, which is where you should be setting it, like imagine getting a first draft from a copywriter in 16 seconds. I mean, so that's what you need to think about, or in 16 minutes if it's a VSL or whatever, right? So that's what the amazing thing is. And I ran some of the first drafts without edits, which is really kind of crazy. I mean, just to test to see how well it would do. But and then of course we have editing AI as well. But eventually the AI will be absolutely better than humans when it comes to this. But, and there's a big massive but here. Okay, but you still need to understand copywriting to understand what you're looking at. You can't just assume it's because nothing will ever be 100%, right? So if you don't know copywriting, you won't know when you're looking at to go, it's missing this right here. And that's why knowledge is even more important right now than ever, because now you got it at your fingertips. Now you have it instantaneously. Well, you need to understand what actually does work and why it works more than any time in history.
Yeah,
much more than you did when you hired a copywriter.
I'd also say context is important because you know what copy works in one company may not work in another just because of the context around it. So you still need humans for those kind of tasks and sort of strategy around it. And I always tell people you won't lose your job to AI. You'll lose your job to somebody that knows AI better than you. So you got to stay on top of this thing, stay on top of the stack, and stay on top of the different models that are coming out. It's not just LLMs; there's specialty AI. There's
which is what we are
basically, and that's the critical part. And I've said that over and over on this podcast. But Jon, what do you see happening with more on the context and workflow? Like you brought up, you'll provide the answer 95% of the time correctly. But what if I give you much more of a complex type of thing to think about, multivariate, multiple steps, workflow process. Now, there is Agentic AI now that's coming out. I don't know if you've done yours that same way.
Yeah, we're fully Agentic. We've been Agentic for over a year.
Okay. So if I were to say, hey, I got this donut business and, I want to improve sales, improve marketing, improve operations. And then I want to, once you learn about my current business, I want to have just a workshop with you, Jon AI, Benson AI, and just go through all of these and do some testing of these ideas, ask you questions, and then maybe even do some forecasting. Now, is that something that you guys are doing reliably at this point?
Oh yeah, especially with the new version of Benson, which comes out ironically next week from the time we're recording this. But yeah, that's to be fully agentic is one thing. To be agentic and you're pulling from your own knowledge bases, and you're actually you're actually fully spinning off different agents for different things is another. So a lot of people they will use some of the features of agents, but they won't use a lot of the tools and a lot of the things that are very, I guess you could say, a little bit more technical, takes a little bit more effort than than just using Lovable to create an app. I'll put it that way, to where you're using all the tools in the right order, in the right sequences. For example, we actually have in Benson alone, we have over 70 agents. So that's a lot of agents to write copy, but we'll have an agent that's specifically geared toward writing nothing more than a big idea, for example. And it's not just a skill; it's an agent. So it's actually trained to do whatever it needs to do. It has to call, for example, it has to call anything viral. It's going to go do a firecrawl search. It's going to do whatever it needs to do to pull something hot, right? So that's what you need to have when you're writing copy. It's especially copy. And when you're talking like what you're talking about, like I have something I need your advice on. How do I sell something? Benson is a copywriting app, so it's going to say, well, here's the copy that you're going to need, and then we have the consulting side of things, which is what the Jon's brain thing is, which is that's where you're going to say, like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and so I'm pulling from over a decade and a half of doing consulting calls for $5,000 an hour, and we've got those recorded, and so the knowledge base is trained on that. It's not trained on Claude. You know, saying that's the thing that you have to be people don't understand about AI is that as amazing as these tools are, their default setting is if I don't know, if I don't have a knowledge base that has an immediate answer, if there's not a skill or a tool that calls a specific knowledge base, I'm going to go out and go for my what I learned on, from reading the internet. So if you ask me, I don't care what it is. If I'm teaching somebody how to play bass or how to be a martial artist or whatever, I'm not going to say go read the internet. That's not. I might say go to this one specific site and learn from this one guy or these three guys or whatever. That's what specialty AI does. So it's like, look, we know the 27 people that you should learn from. Just we've trained it on that, so it doesn't do that. And if you so happen to ask it something it doesn't know, then yes, it will go out and try to find something, but it will still filter it through our filters. And that's the at least when it comes down to copywriting and marketing. If you're not going through a specific set of like, here's what you never do, here's what you always do, here's what, then unless you've done the marketing, and it's just going to take wild guesses, and the wild guesses are usually wrong.
Yeah. Very true. I like how you explain this. I have a couple of challenging questions. The first is, why should somebody clone their own voice? What if they don't have a great voice, and they want something better? Like, I don't know. First person that comes to mind would be, depending on their business, like the Ernest Hemingway of their, their industry. Why would they want their own when it's not that great?
Yeah. Are you referring to their voice metaphorically or their voice literally?
No, well, both. I mean, literally and metaphorically, both would apply in some cases.
Literally, I never say. I do a lot of voiceover work, so I never say you have to clone your own voice. In fact, a lot of people shouldn't. Yeah. A lot of people should use like a voiceover talent. But the great thing about obviously 11 Labs is it gives you a lot of choices for voiceover talent. The problem with that is that you have to really know how to pace that out. Mm-hmm. And it's still like, I would say like, we run right now, our cold traffic offers run to VSLs that I didn't record myself, which is, I did it as a test to see how well it could work, right? And knowing that I would absolutely do a better job than 11 Labs. There's, of course, I've done it for 15 years. So yeah, I'm going to be a little better at 11 Labs. I'm going to be at it, right? But that's an extreme, right? You don't need to go to that extreme for most people. You'll have a series of a lot of good voices, for example, for 11 Labs, and just choose a voice that's and test 3 different voices, because you don't know which one's going to resonate more with your audience. But it's not the voice that I'm the most concerned about. It's the voices and the cadence. It's the voices and is how are you speaking as a writer to your audience? And this is 100% around what we call mirror language. So if you're not using mirror language, which Benson is trained on mirror language, there's no other AI trained on mirror language, you're going to run into some problems because you're talking to your avatar using language that they don't use. And I'm not talking about like obvious language. For example, I tell this story rather famously. My first book was Fit Over 40, and at the time I was 39 when I started writing it. I was a competitive bodybuilder, still am, and I was using terms like sliced and ripped and shredded, and I thought, okay, in my head I was thinking, oh, this is going to be perfect for guys that are like 30, 34, they're seeing 40 on the horizon, and that they've never been in great shape. And so they just want they want 6-pack abs, man. That's what they want, right? Wrong. My audience was, and I didn't know this until 8 years later. This is how slow we were as marketers, right? 8 years later, we do an audience survey, and my average buyer was 67. And get this, 72% were female.
Wow. So
you think that they were responding to ripped abs? I mean, the fact that they bought is just a testimony to how good the marketing was, right? But they couldn't possibly relate to it. I mean, they were, if I would have used their mirror language, what they say to themselves in the mirror, oh my gosh, it would have sold like 10 times more. It just, and we know this, we've tested this numerous times, right? And so if your mirror language is what your avatar says to themselves in the mirror. So if you can learn what that is, If you can learn what your buyers are saying to themselves in the mirror when they look at themselves, it's like, and metaphorically or literally in a physical sense, but metaphorically in another sense, then you've got it made, right? Well, an AI doesn't know that. An AI, you have to know where to go to look for that. And so there's a million little things that when I talk about voice, your most important voice is actually the voice of your buyer. If you can sound like your buyer, you are in like Flint. You're just in. You're just, and I'm talking about you sound like your buyer is in a ethical way. So this comes up to the other thing that we were going to talk about, which is why I think you should not sell to everyone. In fact, I think you should repel most people. I have a totally different view of marketing than most. Most marketers try to sell to as many people as they can. I try to sell to as few people as I can, and make those few people rabid fans so that they spread you around, and you have the best clients in the world, and you don't have to deal with dickheads that you don't want to do business with, and also people that will refund and tire kick and all this kind. You don't want those people. What you want is the people that are really exactly much more in line with your own values. So if you're like, look, hey, here's my values, here's what I stand for as a person, and here's what I put into my product, whatever it may be, and you convey that in verbally speaking, well, you're going to resonate like hell with the people that are also like that. It sounds so common sense, right? It sounds so obvious, but man, look how much the marketing doesn't do that. It just doesn't do it. So few marketers do this.
Yeah. Well, so did you find out, interesting enough, why 70% of women were buying your book? Did you take that next step in the survey?
Yeah, well, I've made jokes about it. I used to say it was because I'm so cute, but then again, they were like 67, so that doesn't really play out real well. Right. But nothing against 67-year-old women, but no, it is. There's a simple reason why, and it's one thing that all of my fitness buddies have had to come to grips with, is that is the demo that says I have to do this. There's a demo that says I want to do this. I'm not saying that people in their 30s and 40s didn't buy because they did, but the people that feel like they have to do it, this is a completely different mindset. They have to do this because they just lost their husband to a younger woman. They just lost they're looking at their health going down the tubes. So it's not just physical, it's emotional, it's mental, it's a hormonal, everything's going completely downhill fast.
And so there's other books that target that segment, right? Why yours?
That's a good, because mine's really good marketing. I mean, that's the bottom line, is like, it was really good marketing. So the bottom line is we don't control who opts into our affiliates mailing lists, right? But when people like go online and they look and they Google, this is back in 2004. So you're limited to essentially Google, right? So you go and you do your Google thing and you search for, okay, fitness over 40 or weight loss over 40. And guess what? Most people searching for weight loss over 40 or weight loss over 50 are going to come across my book, and they're not going to be 41. It's just if you just do the math on this, it's usually like they start worrying about it well after this, after their lives start falling apart. And it usually doesn't happen when they're 40s. It usually happens in their 50s and 60s. So that's why, and we know this now from a lot of different polls and surveys and things like that we sent out to our various users and stuff. But so yeah, it's not, you need to know who your avatar is the bottom line. You need to know who's buying your product. I mean, I thought it was completely different. Now you could totally you could laser target their market. So I suggest you just go into you go to one specific market. Like a great example is I'm going to release something for copywriters, for people who want to be copywriters. But it's like, look, I'm only talking to newbie copywriters that make less than $100,000 a year, but know they need to learn AI. If that's not you, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great.
I'm totally serious. I mean, nothing personal, but fuck off. And I'm not going to talk to you. This is only for these people. So now that's a small segment of the population of copywriters are small to begin with. But again, how many people do you need? I mean, if you get 50,000 people, I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? So laser target to those folks, and then your language, obviously the language patterns. So if I'm talking to newbie copywriters and I'm saying look, you know that you need to write in hypnotic flow and NLP, reverse NLP. They're not going to know what the fuck I'm talking about. they're not going to know if I use a bunch of like terminology that they don't know what I'm talking about. If I'm going to an advanced copywriter and I talk about using hypnotic flow and power words and trigger words and, and all the, all this kind of stuff, order of emphasis, they're going to know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But the beginners aren't going to know what I'm talking about. And so you have to be able to speak to the people that you were speaking to. So yeah, but that's where it gets really interesting, because I can speak to someone who's a newbie with as much passion as I can to somebody who's an expert. So I don't have to like be a different person. I just have to speak a different language. Mm-hmm. I have to speak in different ways. And it's no different than if you have kids, for example, and you have a 10-year-old and an 18-year-old, you're going to speak to them in obviously different ways. So I'm not saying the beginner's 10 and the advanced is 18, but I'm just saying that they're different language patterns. So use the language pattern on your 18-year-old as a 10-year-old, you're going to run into some problems. You know what I'm saying? So it's just knowing your audience, man. It's knowing your audience. AI doesn't know that. So you need tools to help you determine what that is.
Yeah. I mean, your tool, if it could do this, would be even more valuable. Layering questions when it's interacting, your clone's interacting with people that determine exactly, what that audience is and then how to market to them.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I'd love to see an example of this, maybe offline.
I'd love to show it to you.
Your next version. Let me try your next version. Then maybe I can come back on here and.
Oh yeah. Just hit me up. I'll show it to you when we're offline. So I mean, it's really pretty freaking cool some of it is knowing. And again, this is where specialty comes in. It's like we know as copywriters who have done it manually for 15, 20 years, we know where to look for this stuff. So yeah, the AI, it's not going to know where to look for it. You have to tell it where to go to look for it. And this is one of the most apt analogs that I can think of to when I'm talking about the importance of specialty AI versus consumer AI, which is like your typical, ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera. Your typical, you've got narrow AI, which that's what that is. All of it's narrow. None of it's general yet, right? But there's specialty AI that really is breaching on that real specific areas of expertise. So it's very simple. I mean, if you were, for example, to go to, let's say that you were interested in doing a fast, like some sort of a dietary fast, mm-hmm. and there were two AI choices you had. One of them was made by Clive, the guy who lives in his mom's basement, but who happens to be a really good skill coder. And the other guy is Dr. Peter Travers, who's an expert in fasting for 20 years. Who would you choose?
Yeah, the expert.
Right. So it's like people are concerned about AI is going to do this. Well, yeah. So if Clive is a much better marketer, you got a problem. So now you get why these guys who are specialty AI guys, you still need really good marketing to explain, my IP is in this AI. And so we did something really sneaky. Mark, I'll tell you this. This is something that I only know one other person that does this. It's Perry Marshall. I have created products in training over the past 3 years that I've never sold. I've only trained my own AI with it. So that way it cannot be accessible through any of the LLMs. They can't learn it. There's no way to learn it because it doesn't exist anywhere except in the model itself. So you can ask it questions, but you have no idea how it's answering it. So that to me is like putting your own IP into AI is the future for sure.
Yeah.
If you're a specialist.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are starting to learn that, especially bigger corporations that don't want to lose it. Yeah. Okay, I'm sure we could do a lot more talking. One thing I would want to do is kind of go through it when you've got your next version out, and then we can come back on and have a different topic.
Sure.
Since you're a marketer, there's quite a few marketing topics that we can go through. And love to have you back. So in the meantime, go to benson.ai. I think this will be out early next week, so it'll probably just be close to releasing. And how else, John, can people get a hold of you?
So you can go to ucloned.ai and get our free PDF for how the tools that I use to basically create the digital clones of myself. In other words, I have a worker working right now while we're on this podcast, and it's I call him Isaac. Isaac is downloading 134 funnels for me. So. So it's like, it's like it's an unfair advantage if you're not using this. It's like I really, It's like not being on the internet in 2001. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Would love to have you back. Especially, I want to know how you use it, but we'll save that for the next episode. And thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.